Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another What Would You Change movie podcast. We are the Super Monkey Fighters. I am Loki, here with Papa Nugget and Monkey Feathers. This week, we are going through the 1980 classic Airplane. The blurb on IMDb, which is fantastic as always, is a man afraid to fly must ensure that a plane lands safely after the pilots become sick, which sounds like a very dramatic movie, which is not what this movie is at. This is a goofball, screwball comedy. It's kind of one of the originals of that. It is slapstick, it is sarcastic, it is running joke after running joke after running joke. So, was directed by Jim Abrahams and David Zucker and Jerry Zucker. Written by the three of them as well. The first build cast is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lloyd Bridges, Peter Graves, Julie Hagerty, Robert Hayes, Leslie Nielsen, Lorna Patterson, Robert Stack, Steven Stucker, Jim Abrams, who was Religious Zealot number 6, Frank Ashmore as Victor Basta, and I'm going to point these out every time I see them. Jonathan Banks, who played Gunderson, who most people will know as Mike from Breaking Bad. He was one of the random air traffic controllers, the one wearing a leather jacket. Yep, that was Mike. But yeah, it's a classic. I don't know what to say about it other than it's a classic. Who wants to start this? That's the end of the podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for next week, whatever movie that one's going to be.
What did I like? It's funny. What didn't I like? There's parts that aren't funny. What I change? The parts that aren't funny. There we go.
Yeah, I think with this one, it's either movie you like or you don't like, based on the format and the gags, because it's really just a series of gags. The plot really isn't that important. It's just there to propel the gags along.
If you read that blurb on IMDb and think you're going to go in for a fantastic, amazing movie, don't. This is lowbrow, lowest common denominator, but also some really intelligent jokes mixed in there. So or I should say, some well thought out running gags. They
put some attention to detail in many of the gags. I will give them that.
The constant kind of misunderstanding about what somebody means, where they're like, there's something wrong in the cockpit. And somebody says, what's that? And they said, oh, it's the little room in the front of the plane where the pilots sit.
Yeah.
Like, that running gag. It's the
but
kind
that's
of
not important right now.
It's the lowest common denominator, but it's well thought out in how they execute it. And they execute, I mean, that's every gag in this movie pretty much. Like, Shirley, you can't be serious. Of course I'm serious, and don't call me Shirley. That's what this movie is, and that's what it does really well. That's what I love about it. Although it's also tough because I've seen this movie enough to not care anymore. You know what's coming, and so you know the jokes are going to be there, and you're just kind of reminded of what they are beforehand, and so they don't deliver as well as they used to. So
it's all done completely stone-faced, right? It's all it's acted as if it was like there's no comedy involved.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, that's the genius of Leslie Nielsen, and this is one of his earlier comedic roles. Is, he plays it stone-faced, and it's I forget his name. Unsolved Mysteries, that guy.
Robert Stack.
Robert Stack.
Yes.
He's the Unsolved Mysteries guy. I mean, he's the narrator and host of, the serious show, right? That's who these guys are, and that's why I think it lands as well as it does. I mean, even with the scene with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, where he's the co-pilot, and everybody's treating him like the co-pilot. And the kid comes in and recognizes him, and he just tries to play that off like, no, you're mistaking me for somebody else. But he is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. As it progresses, you see that is who it is. And so, there are some very cleverly well-crafted things. I will say this viewing, the thing I enjoyed the most is in the flashback to the bar scene, where the two main characters meet. After the hilarious scene where the Girl Scouts are fighting, one of them gets thrown into a jukebox, and Staying Alive starts playing, and they all start dancing. The guy standing next to the jukebox and the way he dances was the greatest thing I have seen in a long time. He just moves his arms like this, takes his jacket off, and is like, da, 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 da. And So even again, after having seen this movie 100,000 times, you find something new every time that makes you laugh. It's an easy movie to watch. It's short. It doesn't take your time. It doesn't take anything seriously. It intentionally takes things sarcastically. Maybe crosses the line for jokes these days, which is strange because I believe it was rated PG, which I was kind of shocked. But maybe it was 1980s PG.
Yeah, things have
PG
drifted
to where PG-13 didn't exist, and so they've kept that rating, and not even just that. It'd be more of a PG-13. There's no language or anything really too gratuitous, but there are some jokes that don't fit the modern age as well. But it's one of those things where it's all in joking. Like,
yeah, and
when they're landing the plane and it's Air Israel and the plane looks like a Hasidic Jew, like that's kind of culturally insensitive. But 1980, it was a joke. So,
but I think that's kind of what this movie's pushing. It's pushing, like it's steeped in stereotypes, right? That's what it's banking it's some of its comedic value off of. But the fact that it is kind of a slapstick, over the top, overly exaggerated film across the board, I think it's not singling anyone out. So I don't think it comes off as like hateful or anything like that. It's just it's playing on those stereotypes. Yeah,
and it's very tongue in cheek, and it really hits every stereo. I mean, the doctor on a plane stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
the pilot stereotypes, the going through the airport stereotype, where the Robert Stack, when he walks through and just is fighting every religious zealot who's trying to offer him a flower or whatever, like. I mean, that's what it is. It's just lampooning those kinds of things. That's the type of humor it is. But that's also the type of humor these days that tends to offend somebody and make people upset. And so that's where it kind of doesn't quite fit this era as much as it fit the era of 1980. So,
but you'll have to let us know in the comments what you think. If you think it fits in the modern era still, or if it's offensive.
Should Airplane be canceled?
Yeah, let us know.
Feathers, you've been awfully quiet.
I have. I've been letting you guys, talk.
Dig our own graves?
Well, kind of. We all know how I usually feel about slapstick comedies, especially with National Lampoon. And this was the first time that I had seen it.
This
only
is not
because
National Lampoon, but it's a similar vein.
Yes. And this was the first time that I had seen it. It wasn't a movie that I ever looked at and thought like, man, I'm going to see that movie. But I will say that I actually enjoyed this movie. And I think it might have been...
I am surprised by that.
I know, and I knew that you would be. I think I walked into this not expecting anything. And I walked out appreciating a lot of the jokes. I didn't laugh at them. But I thought, like, oh, I get it. I get that joke. It's kind of funny. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it's kind of funny.
Good job, Captain America. Yeah. I understand that reference.
I liked the cheesiness of it and the fact that, as you guys had talked about, like the running jokes. The joke where every time he would tell a story, the person next to him would be about... They would either kill themselves or they would be about to kill themselves. So I surprisingly did enjoy this movie and its cheesiness. And I did appreciate that it was a shorter film because I think if it was longer than what it was, the jokes would have gotten old by the end of the movie.
Even as short as it was, some of the jokes kind of started getting...
Yeah.
I mean, by the time it gets to the end of it, you're just like, great, let's be done with it. And that's kind of how they end the movie, is there's
and that's
like,
what's kind of that's what's kind of interesting is because you guys have talked about seeing this 1,000 times. I think having seen it just this one time, I was able to appreciate the jokes as they came and not think it was overdone. I think if I were to see it another time after this, or even if it was a longer film, I think I would have been done with it a lot quicker. Yeah. But surprisingly, overall, given that there was no plot really, there was no character development really, there was nothing. It was just a movie about running jokes.
It was It's one of those that I've seen articles pop up on the internet in the last couple of years that talk about how people just finally discovered the last running gag in Airplane. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I get that this is trying to just kind of bring this back into the fold and get people to go and rent the movie again or whatever it is. But the thing that they always point out is the fact that every shot of the airplane that's flying, it's a jet engine airplane, but they have propeller sounds going for it. And it's one of those like, this is a hidden joke that nobody ever got. And it's like, got it. It's just not that good of a joke. Like it's a very specific thing that a few people will actually catch on to, but it's not a ha ha ha. Oh, that's funny. You guys did propeller noises for a jet engine airplane. Like,
it's funny you say that because my stepdad is like so he's a motorcycle mechanic that always picks out about how the sounds in films always have the wrong motorcycle sounds. Like in the Terminator 2, he's like, that's not what the sound that motorcycle makes. And it's like every time we watch a movie, that's what he says. So it's like,
and that's the kind of person who gets those kinds of things. And so there's one of those running gags where is when he gets his orders for the war and he's telling her, like, he gives her minute details about what he's doing, and then he's like, but I can't talk about that, it's classified.
Yeah,
well,
he's like, I'm leaving on this day, and we're going to go do this time, but I can't tell you when I'm going to come back.
That's classified. Yeah.
I think, though, the opening scene with the plane and the fin and the Jaws music that's playing, I think that kind of sold me for what kind of movie it was going to be, and realized,
it really does set it up.
Yeah. And then I let go of every other notion of what to expect. And I think that might have been why I enjoyed it a lot more. Yeah. It's just because, a plane first off doesn't move that way. And it's not going to be Jaws. But at the end of the day, it's not meant to be. It's meant to be funny.
And that's every visual gag in it where the baggage claim, instead of the bags coming out onto the carousel, it's the people coming out and the bags are sitting around it. I mean, it's just stupid joke after stupid joke after stupid joke, and that's what makes it fantastic. But I could also see why that would be a negative for some people, and I guess mainly it would be a negative, especially if you take things way too seriously. But those are the kind of people that jokes don't work on anyway, and so I think if you take anything too seriously, this is a bad movie for you.
Yeah, and this one really pushes it because, I mean, even if we're comparing like National Lampoons, like with those, there's still a story. There's still kind of those touchy-feely moments and like in it. This one has none of that. It's just straight gags. So like if you get into this and it's not your kind of movie, I don't know how you could struggle through it because you're not going to get anything else. I will say that even though I wouldn't say the acting's great, I would say that the amount of people that they had acting the gags, it was good, and there were a lot of parts played for all these gags. So creating a crew with all those people to execute all those gags, and as a whole, the way it was done, I think was really good.
Which I think is something that is a little bit different with a lot of comedies. Like you'll have an ensemble comedy, right? But you'll have the 4 or 5 or 6 comedians,
right?
And those are the only people involved in the jokes. And then you'll have like the one cameo goofball that shows up for the 1 or 2 scenes, right? The delivery guy in the Adam Sandler movies that's Rob Schneider always plays. Like you'll have that kind of a character. But this really is, I mean, Top Billed is a character name that was Religious Zealot number 6. And it's because he's a passenger on the plane that you see all the time and people interact with. And so, but he's in on the gag and he's playing those parts really well. And, you know, the amount of little old ladies that they had on this plane doing ridiculous things is amazing. So it's,
and like the children,
a big credit to it. Yeah. The kid walking by with the coffee.
Yeah.
In the
Excuse me.
Excuse me. I saw you sitting here and I thought I would offer you some coffee. Just like, And it's just, to take anything beyond that, here's a gag you're going to watch and you're going to laugh at this one little joke and then move on to the next joke. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it does well. So, but I think that also leads us into some of the negatives of it, where some of those gags don't necessarily land as well, and never really have, and have just been a bit more annoying. There's the he's the air traffic controller guy. He's like the gag guy in there. Like, I don't think any of his stuff really lands that well because he's the only one that's obviously playing a joke. Every time he asks, "Hey, how about a cup of coffee?" and he's like, "No, thanks."
He's like the
That guy goes
air
over
traffic
the top.
jester.
Yeah, he's the core jester, and it's like in a movie that's hilarious for being straight-faced, he's not straight-faced the whole time. And I mean, he's making obvious jokes where everybody else is making jokes about things that aren't joking. You know, the "Don't call me Shirley." Like, that's not a joke, but it's hilarious the way that they make it. They turned it into a joke, and everything this other guy does is just, it's a gag, it's a joke. It's, you know, it's the guy who doesn't understand sarcasm trying to be sarcastic. And yeah, for me, those ones don't land as well. Like, there are some things he does that I think are funny. That could be something I think that would be removed. And maybe that'll be my change as well, is just remove that character. I think the movie works just as well.
Maybe even better because it doesn't draw your attention to his character.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe what bugs me about it is he's trying to draw attention to himself the whole time.
Well, yeah,
There's
pulls away to him.
He sings and dances out of the room one time, like when they're going up to the tower. He's singing something about Rapunzel and like dancing through the room. And it's like nobody else is that over the top with anything.
And
they're over the top, but they're not that like intentionally making a joke. And that's the thing is nobody in the movie is intentionally making a joke except for him. So.
And then none of the other actors like even acknowledge him. Also,
it's almost like. Yeah, it's almost like he's an imaginary character that only the audience sees.
Yeah.
So, I agree a lot with what Loki had said about the jokes not landing as well as they could. I think that if this movie would be made now, I don't think it would have the same jokes because a lot of them are stereotypes, but I think a lot of people would look at them more as being potentially on the racist side of the jokes or being inappropriate. When you mentioned that this movie was PG, I was kind of surprised because some of the jokes in that I thought would have potentially pushed it to a higher rating, especially a nude shot of a woman that I thought, oh, as soon as I came on screen, I thought, oh, is this rated R? Because it's a nude... Oh, yeah.
Is it the magazine stand?
No, it's an actual nude woman. Yeah.
I don't remember this at all.
I don't either.
That is... You guys have seen it so many times, you've just blocked it out.
Apparently.
Probably.
But
We're focused on Leslie Nielsen.
But I was kind of surprised because I don't think a movie in the 80s would have had a nudity shot without pushing it to either PG-13 or a R rating. But just some of the jokes, I would have thought that, you know, if it was made now, it would be either really offensive and it just would have been written out, or, you know, something like that.
I think it's you can look at it as the comedies maybe elevated to where they would have done it in a different way that would have been funnier for the times. And so that's where I think you look at a lot of movies, because especially even the Scary Movie franchise, like those were big movies at the time. People really enjoyed those. But there's some really offensive jokes in there, and they're offensive to be offensive. They're not offensive to be funny. And I think that's a big difference. And I think that's where, if this movie were to be made today or remade, Airplane were to be remade today. And I think Airplane did it well at the time as well, where it's funny first. And if you take offense to it, you're going to take offense to it, where it's not intending to be offensive as humor, because I don't think being offensive is funny. And that's the difference. So it's a negative that some of the things don't land, but there are so many gags in this movie where it's like, okay, this didn't land. Wait 2 seconds and something will.
Yeah, it's almost like you needed those to have a break between the good ones. Like, if they all landed, then would our brains explode? I don't know.
From just over hilarious landing of jokes.
And if the joke works for you and not somebody else, then a different joke's going to work for them and not for you. And it's one of those things where there's just so much that, you know, it's a good and a bad.
The final thing that I didn't like, and I know it's kind of like a joke, but especially when I think about things nowadays, The fact that he walks up to one of the airport employees and he asks for his girlfriend, maybe ex-girlfriend, he asks what flight she's on, and she's like, oh, she's on this flight, and things like that. And I thought, you're just giving out this person's personal information to this dude. You have no idea who he is. So there's a problem with that, because he could just be a stalker that's ready to kill her. Or he could be like a bomber who's going to blow up a plane. You don't know.
It seemed like they played that a little bit more like everybody knew who everybody was, kind of thing. And he asked.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, it's kind of a joke. I get that it's the joke, but I just thought, you're just giving out this information to this dude, and you don't know him, and
that's a joke that's a gag that gets me every time. That part where she asks, he buys a ticket, and she asks him smoking or not smoking, because my first thought goes to, oh right, this is the era when that was a thing, and then I think, wait, it was never. You could never actually smoke on planes. Like the '60s were a thing. But then he takes the ticket, and the ticket is smoking, and it's like, oh, right, that's the joke, and it gets me. That's one that it does get me every time, that I forget that that's the joke, that's the gag they're going to play, and then when he's walking out to the plane, it's still smoking. They don't let it go, which is fantastic. So
yeah, I have a hard time faulting it for anything because it's slapstick and
it's the things that are bad are intentionally for me, it's some of those like the jokes that don't land for me. It's like, that doesn't land for me. But the Girl Scout knife fight is one of the. I mean,
and it goes throughout the entire scene.
This whole scene. I mean, they're still dancing at the end. The bar is closed, and then they throw the dummy on the floor like the fight just ended. So as far as changes go, I don't know if there's really a ton of things that any of us would necessarily change. I think that one character, I think maybe just adjust those jokes to be. It stands out as weird because nobody else interacts with him beyond like the initial setup, and then he delivers the punchline, and everybody else just is not there. So, which stands out for the film.
Yeah, I think it's hard with comedies to say what you would or wouldn't change, because comedy is selective. As Nugget had mentioned, you either like this movie or you don't like this movie. You're either going to find offense to this movie or you're not. And even then, you might find offense to some jokes as opposed to other jokes. So it's kind of hard to critique a movie and say what you would change, because it's a comedy movie. You're either going to like it or you're not. I think if this movie would be made nowadays, a lot of the jokes would be changed or switched to fit the times.
Yeah,
and either be less offensive or
which I think would be an appropriate thing to do, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be funny in a modern era because the time, you're not going to make a cell phone joke because cell phones didn't exist back then, kind of thing. That's really what it is.
Yeah. You make more appropriate jokes to what era you're living in. So I don't know if there is anything that I would change about it. It does what it should do, which is running joke after running joke. You're not going to walk into it expecting this grand storytelling of this guy who overcomes his fear of flying to land a plane. It's not that kind of a movie.
Well, and I mean, there's times where we get kind of nitpicky on some films when we get talking about them, and this is one that I don't think that's appropriate for.
Yeah.
Because the basic premise is simple enough that you don't need to really nitpick beyond that. I mean, it's the crew gets sick. This guy's got to fly the plane, and that's the situation that you're in. And it's like it's not more complex, and it's a comedy. So yeah, we could nitpick all of the stupid little things, even beyond the gags, where it's like, why do you have another pilot come in who happens to be his commander and blah blah blah? It's like, well, because it's everything in this film is a device to it's a vehicle for the gag. And it's a problem I have with a lot of action movies is everything in the action movie is a vehicle to the action sequence. But a lot of the times, none of that makes any sense. And so you're like, yeah, it was cool when that dude did that flip and punched that guy in the face. But everything to get me to that point is really dumb. And this movie does it really well, where you don't need to care about the vehicle that gets you there because you're there and it's funny. And it's just moving you through those scenes. And I think it does it really well. I feel like I could probably nitpick this apart, but then It's very obvious that you missed the point of this entirely.
And
You're going to start
loses-
nitpicking this film, and yeah.
It loses its effect because we could say, oh man, I would take out the stereotype jokes, but that's basically what this movie is in some form or other. So you can't take out the stereotype jokes and then stop a movie. You can't, take out some of the more inappropriate jokes, I would say relatively for the times now, without it having the same effect. And so that is just it. If you start nitpicking this movie and trying to change the tiny things, you start to not have a movie.
And I don't know
at that point.
And I don't know if it's fair to retroactively judge a movie based on modern times.
Yeah, I think you need to look at it within the context of what was going on. And so that's where I could see somebody who doesn't have that context or that hindsight seeing this and taking it out of context and being offended, which I don't really know of anybody who ever has. Like, I've never come across somebody who's been like, oh, that, talk and jive, that's an offensive joke. And it's like, I could see how it can be taken offensive, but I don't know if anybody actually would be. And even then, like, that's a situation where that joke, even if you did that joke now, it wouldn't be talk and jive. It would be something else.
Yeah.
It'd be talking TikTok or talking emojis or something like that, right? You'd be, because it's the juxtaposition of that joke is the last person you expect to understand this cultural reference is the person who does.
Yeah.
That's the joke. And to see anything beyond that is reading way too much into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the joke is not intended to be offensive in the way that some movies intend to be offensive with their jokes. And, the joke is that we're being offensive. This is not. This is a juxtaposition. And I think that's why it works. And that's why it works. Even now, if they were to remake this movie, they would adjust for the times a lot.
Sure.
And
they would have to, or
if they were smart.
It would not work.
Or they'd get a bad director who would be offensive to be offensive. And it would be like, oh, hey, let's go after, this is in the news, let's make fun of it. And it's like, no, that's not what we do in these situations. That's not why Airplane is funny. Airplane is funny because of that juxtaposition. I'm just surprised that Nugget and I, having seen this movie several times, don't remember the naked woman. And that's some juxtaposition for you. The two you would expect to see that didn't, and the one you wouldn't did. So we'll leave you on that one. Let us know if you've seen Airplane. I'm sure if you haven't, your dad has, and he thinks it's the funniest movie ever.
Or he finds it completely offensive because he's on the other half of the aisle.
It's either Airplane is the funniest movie ever or Caddyshack. Tell us your thoughts. Tell us your comments. Tell us what we should watch next. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Adios.